Asah Dudes! Welcome to episode 3 on the 93 Ranger build. If you guys haven't already, make sure you watch the introduction and the teardown video that we've done on this truck already. I'll have the links down in the description below, but without further ado, let's get started on today's video. So today I'm going to be working on getting this stock transmission crossmember out of here. It looks like it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 5th bolt on the other side of the frame over there. Only 5 bolts holding it in. I need to get this out because the new radius arm mounts bolt into these bolt holes right here, which help you locate where they need to be mounted on the frame, so that helps out a lot. So this needs to get out of here. I need to jack the trans up just to get the weight off the crossmember itself, and then unbolt this thing. And then once I have the radius arm mounts bolted up to the frame, I need to make a transmission crossmember that goes in between the mounts, that's removable. That actually mounts the transmission again, because obviously this is going to be gone now, so I need to do something about that. So the first thing we need to do is get this unbolted, and then we'll get the new radius arm mounts bolted up in their place and go from there. Since the last video, all I've been working on is getting the frame rails cleaned up a little bit more. After doing a wire wheel and floppy disc on these, I went back with a DA sander. It's basically just palm sander with some sandpaper on it, and just went over the frame rails. It took me probably 30 minutes aside just sanding them down and getting them to somewhat of a consistent finish. You can see now it's not as lumpy and weird. There is rust here in the frame on both sides, which is where the coil bucket used to sit. I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to be plating the frame from the body mount right here all the way to the core support mount. So all these cheese grater holes in the frame are gonna get covered up and the rust will be gone. So I'm not too worried about it. I have wire wheeled this entire engine crossmember to get it cleaned up. That way I can get it painted in the steellet that we're going to be doing on everything on the truck. That'll be later though. This beam bracket I have just sitting up here just as a mock-up. I got too anxious. I wanted to see what it looked like. But I did get some weld washers welded on here, as well as the other beam bracket that goes on the other side. But I need to get this painted in steellet before I can get it bolted to the frame. So that needs to get painted, but we need to get started on this trans crossmember first. So let's get started with that. Well, now we got both radius arm mounts bolted up to the frame where the stock transmission crossmember was before, utilizing these 3 bolt holes in the frame rail. So now all I need to do is drill out this hole right here, drill out that hole, and then there's also one more down up underneath here. So there's 3 holes on each side I need to drill to finish getting these radius arm mounts mounted onto the frame rail. So I'm gonna finish drilling those right now, and then we can start making the transmission crossmember that goes in between the 2 mounts themselves. Here's the piece I just made that's going to go in between the radius arm mounts. So what I did is I prepped both sides where I'm going to be welding them to the radius arm mounts themselves. Prepped them up all nice just so they're ready for welding. And then I also did the center of this with just some sandpaper just to get it to nice shiny metal. And the reason I did that before I put it in the truck is because it's going to be easier to make the mount off of this, because I'm going to have to make the trans mount in the center of this tube underneath the truck. So instead of sanding all this down while it's underneath the truck, I just did it while it was out just to make things a little bit easier. So let's get this tacked into the truck and then we can start making the transmission mount. Now what I'm gonna do is focus on getting the transmission mount all done. To do that, there's 2 bolts right here that you can see on the bottom side of the transmission. What I'm gonna do is just some simple plate work that's gonna capture those 2 bolts and then land on the tube itself. And then once that's made, what I'll do is I'll come in here and cut this crossmember right here and also right there, and then add in some just little flanges that have bolts that go through them, so this center section is removable. That way whenever you need to work on the transmission down the road, this tube isn't in the way, and you'll be able to just unbolt it instead of having to unbolt both radius arms and then the tube will come out as all one piece. That would just suck. So having this center section removable will make things a lot easier down the road. And there we go. Trans crossmember is all ready to go. It's all tacked up. I need to cut this section of the crossmember out now, and I'm gonna finish weld this out of the truck just to make it a little bit easier. So what I'm gonna do is weld a little bit on each side on the radius arm where it meets the radius arm mount, and then I'm going to cut this crossmember out of the truck completely, finish weld that mount onto the tube, and then I'm gonna get it back up in here and then make the flanges that'll make this crossmember completely removable. Well, there we go. Trans mounts all burned in. I've been working on finishing welding that up, but I also have these made as well. These are gonna go on each end of the crossmember right here. This is gonna be the removable part of it. So it's 2 plates put together with bolts holding it in. One plate will get welded to this part of the crossmember, and then the other plate will get welded to the radius arm. And then when you need to remove it, all you do is just pull these 4 bolts, and then this will slide right out of the truck. All right, and we're back. Today, we're gonna focus on getting back on this trans crossmember, getting this finished up. So I need to take the piece, get that stub right there that I cut off, get that cleaned up, get that side cleaned up as well, and then get the crossmember, which is on the table over here. I need to get both ends of this cleaned up so these flanges can get welded onto here, and then this center section of the crossmember is removable. So to get started on that, like I said, I need to get all the ends prepped and then ready to get welded up. So, well, we got the trans crossmember all tacked up under the truck, and then we got it unbolted, and now I got it on the table. I'm gonna go back through here, weld all the stuff up on here that needs to be welded on the bench just to make it a little bit easier. And this truck does have a little bit of a gas leak somewhere in the back, so I'm smelling gas into the truck, so I don't want to be welding or grinding or doing anything as much as possible underneath the truck. So if I can do it on the bench, I'm gonna do it. So we're gonna weld this up right now, and then this can get, I'm gonna probably mock it up after I weld everything up just to make sure it's all good to go. And then we're gonna throw some Steelite on it, and then this can go back on the truck for final. As you can see, I got the radius arm mounts bolted back into the frame. I also have the crossmember back up in there. It's fully welded now. I just wanted to make sure everything fits still once it was welded. Everything fits great, so I'm gonna pull this back out. As you can see, I have the frame rail already painted. I painted this in Steelite, which is what we're going to be doing the entire truck in. So these mounts right here are gonna be done in this same color. And then the radius arms and the beams themselves will be done in a black color, which Steelite just came out with as well. But let's talk about what this stuff is real quick. So the owner Ryan and I have had a bunch of discussions on how the truck's gonna get painted, whether it be powder coat, Line-X, just normal spray paint, or this Steelite. We decided on doing basically everything on the truck in Steelite. So we're gonna be doing the frame rails and all the mounts bolted to the frame in the silver color in Steelite, and then the beams and then the radius arms and the steering, I believe, we're gonna do in a black color. So the black I don't have yet. The silver I have a whole bunch of right here. So if you've never heard of this stuff before, Steelite, it is stainless steel pigment in a can. So you spray this out instead of using like normal paint. This you spray onto a fully clean surface. It has to be bare metal when you spray it on. But the cool part about this stuff is you're able to weld directly through it. So if you're ever, like, let's just say I'm using this on the beams and I find a crack on them at some point down the road after he's been driving it, I'll be able to take the crack, weld directly over this stuff. I don't have to clean it up or anything, and then I can just spray right over what I just welded and we're good to go again. So that's the benefit of this stuff. I'm going to be doing everything in it, so that way if he ever wants to add a tab to the frame down the road, or add anything to whatever, anything I'm adding to this truck, the front bumper. So I'm doing everything in Steel It, that way he doesn't have to grind paint down to add whatever he wants to down the road. It'll be nice and simple and easy for him. So that's the plan. I do actually need to get this Crossmember out of the truck now and get it painted and Steel It, so let's go ahead and get started with that. And just like that, this is all painted and ready to get put back underneath the truck. The paint is pretty dry now, so I'll be able to get the hardware back into the center section to get the radius arms mounted back onto this whole structure. In the meantime, while that was drying, I did paint this crossmember right here that goes underneath the motor and Steel It, as well as the motor mount, or not the motor mount, but the cab mount right here, and the frame rail all the way back to, there's a crossmember in the frame back there. I only went to there just because we're not going to do the rear of the truck yet, and I'll wait until we get to that point later, but at least now the frame underneath the cab of the truck is all freshly painted and looks great. So I can get the radius arm mounts bolted back up to the frame now, as well as the beam mounts, and then we'll be able to hang the beams and radius arms underneath the truck, so that's exciting. Well, this overlay plate's all burned on here, except for this little tricky part right here, but I'm gonna come back and weld that. I gotta cut this section of the cab out just to be able to get to it. I'm gonna wait until I do the overlay plate on the other side just to come back and do this, because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this. I did put a bunch of rosette welds on the face of this overlay plate. The reason behind that is because when you weld the perimeter of this entire plate, you leave the center section of it unwelded, which means it could have a tendency to pull the center of the plate up away from the frame, especially if we're planning on, which we are going to be mounting bump stops and limit straps to this plate right here. So all that tension from pulling and pushing up could pull this plate away or downwards, and you don't want that to happen. So adding these rosette welds in here definitely helps with that. It just keeps everything sucked to the frame rail nice and tight. So this side is basically done. This other side is gonna be a little bit more tricky, like I said before, because there is a kick in the frame right here. So I'm gonna have to make this front piece as one plate, and then this second back piece is one plate. I'm probably gonna do this off camera just because it's gonna be just like the other side, it's gonna be the same thing. So I'll get back with you guys once this side is all plated in just like the other, and we'll go from there. And just like that, we have beams and radius arms bolted up to the truck. So I think that's gonna be it for this video. We've gotten quite a bit done. This truck pulled in here exactly 1 week to the day. It pulled in here last Thursday, and today is currently Thursday. So we did get all the stock stuff pulled off of this truck. We've gotten everything stripped off the frame rails, the frame rail plated back up. All the stock bracketry was cut off the frame, and then the new beam mounts and radius arm mounts were added. The trans cross member was made and painted. That's in for final. The beams and radius arms were plated in and then bolted up, and now we're ready to start making the shock mounts. And then the next thing I'm going to do, which is going to be in the next video, I need to start getting everything off the beam end here. So that means the spindles, the hubs, the rotors, the wheel bearings, all that stuff needs to go on here. We have everything new in boxes waiting to go on this thing, so that's super cool. Everything's gonna be nice and fresh. I'll be getting to that in the next video though. I'd like to take a minute and just thank you guys that have subscribed to us and have followed my brother and I along the way. We make these videos just for fun, so the interest that we've seen from you guys is super, super rad. 2019 should be a great year for the channel and for me and my brother just personally. So, as always, if you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.